And here's Billy McNeill holding the cup for Celtic. Only the 5th club to win this trophy and the first British club.
He wasn't the headline. Billy McNeill was the heartbeat. He didn't chase cameras. He just stood tall and made a whole club believe. First Brit to lift the European Cup. Captain of Celtic's 9 in a row. Over 800 appearances, then returned and delivered 4 more league titles as manager. No noise, no demands, just presence. They sang for scorers. Built legends from the loud. But McNeil, he held the line. No statue until years too late. No chant that stayed. Just respect carried quietly by those who understood what greatness really looks like. Billy McNeill, the man who lifted Europe and never once lifted his voice. Subscribe if you still believe football belongs to the men who gave everything and asked for nothing. Billy McNeill was born on the 2nd of March 1940 in Bellshill, Lanarkshire, a Scottish town built on coal, cold mornings and hard-earned pride. He joined Celtic in 1957 at the age of 17, a local lad walking through the gates of a club that hadn't yet become a dynasty. He made his senior debut on 23rd August 1958 against Clyde I of 822 times he'd wear the jersey. They weren't feared, they weren't dominant, they were still searching for the version of themselves that history would one day remember. And into that space, McNeil stepped with quiet certainty. His early years shaped him, not with glory, but with grit. He led without the armband. He held the line before he was ever asked to. By 1963, at just 23, he'd been made club captain, trusted not for volume, but for vision. Then came the moment everything changed. 24th April 1965, Scottish Cup final. Celtic versus Dunfermline. Tied 2-2 in extra time. A corner swung in, a crowd in the box, and Billy McNeill rising above the chaos like he'd waited his whole life for it. Header, goal, 3-2, Cup won. It was Celtic's first major trophy in 7 years. It was Jock Stein's first title as manager. It was the beginning of an empire, and at the heart of it was McNeill. In that same season, McNeill was named Scottish Footballer of the Year, a rare honour for a defender and a sign of how much his leadership already meant. From that day on, he wore the captain's armband. But he'd been carrying the responsibility long before. By 1966, Celtic had grown stronger, but Billy McNeill had already become the spine. And then came the season that changed everything. 1966-67. The year Celtic won it all. Scottish League, Scottish Cup, Scottish League Cup, Glasgow Cup, European Cup. No British club had ever done that. None have done it since. And every player in that team, born within 30 miles of Glasgow. They were called the Lisbon Lions. But before they earned the name, they had to face the giants. 25th May 1967, Estadio Nacional, Lisbon European Cup final, Celtic versus Inter Milan. Inter had won 2 of the last 3. Italian, ruthless. Defended like a wall. They scored first a penalty in the 7th minute, 1-0, Inter. McNeill didn't panic. He pulled his players in, tightened the back line, and waited for the game to turn. Then it came. Tommy Gemmell equalized in the 63rd. Stevie Chalmers scored the winner in the 84th. Final score, 2-1, Celtic. The whistle blew. Lisbon shook, Celtic European champions. And Billy? He climbed the steps alone, separated from the team by the celebration chaos, and lifted the European Cup high into the sky. The first British player to do it. No speech, no fist pump, just arms raised. The moment became a photograph. The photograph became a statue. And Celtic became legend. Jock Stein said, "There is not a prouder man in Europe tonight than Billy McNeill, and no man deserves it more." He didn't win it with flair. He won it with presence. He didn't need to be the noise. He was the reason the noise happened. Billy McNeill, the man who stood still while history moved around him. What came after Lisbon wasn't a celebration. It was domination. He also reached the final again in 1970. Celtic lost 2-1 after extra time to Feyenoord, a painful chapter, but one that never dimmed his legend. From 1966 to 1974, Billy McNeill captained Celtic to 9 straight league titles, a run unmatched in British football at the time. 9 titles, 9 seasons. No cracks. He didn't miss games. He didn't drop standards. He didn't let Celtic look down, not even for a second. They called it the 9-in-a-row era. But McNeill never counted. He just led. Alongside him, Jinky Johnstone, Bobby Murdoch, Tommy Gemmell. But the armband? Always McNeill's. He wasn't the Flash. He was the fire that kept the machine alive. Every season, another trophy, another charge, another wall to break. League titles from 1966 to 67 through 1973 to 74. As captain, 7 Scottish Cups, 6 League Cups. As manager, 3 more Scottish Cups. By the end of the 9th title in May 1974, he had played over 800 matches for Celtic, more than any man before or after. And when the moment came to walk away, he didn't beg for one more season. He gave it everything. Then handed the shirt back clean, heavy, and full of history. His final match? 3rd May 1975, the Scottish Cup final. Celtic beat Airdrie 3-1, and McNeill bowed out as a champion just as he had lived, leading from the front. He played for his country with dignity, 29 caps, 3 goals, and never a complaint. Just the same quiet excellence. McNeill was awarded the MBE in 1974 after leading Celtic through their 9 in a row. He retired in 1975, a captain turned immortal. Most would have stayed away. Built their legacy in comfort. I've had a great career, and it's time to go. I leave with no regrets. But Billy McNeill didn't need comfort. He needed purpose. Even in retirement, he gave back, donating his medals and memorabilia to Celtic's museum, so the story wouldn't just be his, but everyone's. He managed Clyde for 1 season, then took Aberdeen in 1977. In just 1 season, he led Aberdeen to 2nd place in the league, their best finish in over a decade. But in 1978, the call came from home. Celtic were broken. Jock Stein had gone. The magic had faded. Rangers were on the rise. The club needed more than a manager. They needed a symbol of certainty. And McNeill answered without hesitation. His first season, he delivered the impossible. 1978-79 Scottish Premier Division title. A comeback for the ages. They called it the 10 men who won the league. On 21st May 1979, Celtic beat Rangers 4-2 despite being a man down. McNeill's side showed fire, composure, and unity, everything he had once led from the pitch. He did it again in 1980, 1981, and 1982, 3 more league titles. And a Scottish Cup for good measure. That Scottish Cup, lifted in 1980, was more than a trophy. It was proof Celtic had rediscovered their fight under McNeill's fire. He rebuilt Celtic not into the Lisbon Lions, but into a side that reflected his values. Discipline, steel, clarity under pressure. His teams played hard, but always with dignity, just like their manager. By the end of his first Celtic managerial spell in 1983, he had restored belief, restored titles, and reminded a generation what the club stood for. He left to manage Manchester City, then Aston Villa, before fate called him back one more time. In 1987, McNeill returned to Celtic for a second spell as manager. The challenge? Rangers now supercharged by money and momentum. The response? The double. 1987-88 season. Celtic's centenary year. McNeill delivered the league and the Scottish Cup. Not with the same faces, but with the same fire. It was his final major act in football management, and he gave it everything again. Across both spells, McNeill managed Celtic in 459 matches, winning 4 league titles, 3 Scottish Cups, and 1 League Cup. Kenny Dalglish once said, "Billy didn't just captain the team, he captained the dressing room, the club, and the support. Everyone followed because they trusted him. He led without ego. He listened. He showed up early, left late, and never asked others to do what he wouldn't. Even as a manager, he protected his players like a father. Firm when needed, but always there. He was never in it for the spotlight. He was in it for Celtic and for the people who filled the stands every week. Outside football, he was a family man. Married to Liz, his lifelong partner, with whom he raised 5 children. In time, the voice grew softer, the stride less sharp. But Billy McNeill was still there in the stands, in the tunnel, in the way Celtic carried itself. Billy McNeill was inducted into the Scottish Football Hall of Fame in 2002. 2 years later, in 2004, Celtic added him to their own Hall of Fame. Then in 2017, his family released a statement. Billy had been battling dementia for years, and now he could no longer speak. The man who had once lifted the European Cup into the Lisbon sky could no longer say his own name. It was heartbreaking, not because he lost his memory, but because we never forgot. Tributes poured in not just from Celtic, but from Rangers, Aberdeen, Hearts, even rivals bowed their heads. He was more than a Celtic captain, he was a Scottish icon. In 2017, the North Stand at Celtic Park was renamed the Billy McNeill Stand, so every game would be played beneath his name. On 22nd April 2019, Billy McNeill passed away. He was 79 years old. Celtic Park stood in silence. Scarves hung from railings. Fans wept openly. In the final derby before his funeral, players wore the number 5 on their shorts, his sacred number, and both sides applauded on the 67th minute. That same week, his bronze statue outside Celtic Park Arms, lifted with the European Cup, became a shrine. Unveiled on 19 December 2015, the statue outside Celtic Park Arms, raised with the European Cup, became a shrine in 2019. Scarves, flowers, notes that simply said, "Thank you, Caesar." Not as royalty, but as a man who led with presence, a general of dignity, a leader without self-interest. Some players are remembered, a few are honored, but only one became the face of Celtic's soul. He played 822 times for Celtic. He lifted 31 trophies across his career, including every major honor in Scotland and Europe. Captained the only Scottish team to ever win the European Cup, now known as the Champions League. Then rebuilt them again when all seemed lost. He was the first man to lift that silver under the Lisbon sun, and the last man to ever ask for credit. In 2025, if you go to Celtic Park, you'll still see him arms raised, bronze, proud, permanent. And if you listen closely, you'll hear what McNeill always knew. That football isn't about noise, it's about honor. And legends, they don't shout, they stand. Subscribe if you still believe in men who gave everything, who led with dignity, who never asked to be remembered, but will never be forgotten. Billy McNeill, the man who lifted us all.